Nioh is not an easy game by any stretch, but it is the most mechanically sound game to exist probably ever. If you're looking for aggressive combat that can be customized in over a million ways, this game's perfect for you. The learning curve is high, and I mean really high. If you've never finished at least the main story of Nioh, then it's likely due to the brutal nature at which the game beats you down. That being said, most player deaths feel very fair and require you to learn a boss mechanic you don't understand or exploit an enemy's weakness. And oh boy, you can really exploit this game, as magic is the most cheesy thing I've seen since, well, Swiss cheese. Here's how I beat Nioh for the first time, after almost quitting more times than I can count. Right away I could tell there was a lot to this game. Dealing with stamina, or ki as it's called here, is your top priority, and you have 3 different stances to attack from. High deals the most damage but has a slower dodge. Medium deals moderate damage while swinging in an arc, better for multiple enemies. And light attacks are very quick with a dodge that gets you in and out of combat easily. I learned all of this way later, unfortunately. For now, we meet the Executioner. Got my confidence up quite a bit as he's a very easy boss to dodge and goes down quickly. Then of course he transforms into a monster version of himself and gets significantly more difficult. Which, I mean, he's still really easy, no fast attacks, and with large delays, you can get plenty of attack windows. But he does hit like a truck, and I managed to die against the tutorial boss, of course. Back the second time, I opted to use the two-handed axe with its extremely high damage, this time securing myself the win. A black-hooded stranger approaches and steals my spirit guardian, forcing me to fall into the ocean and sail to a far-off land. Officially in the game now, I selected the Kato as my spirit, which is supposed to be the best option for a large portion of the game. I ran the Kusarigama, which is an incredible weapon with very unique attacks. As my secondary weapon, the Odachi was a good option, because a longer blade that hits really hard sounded cool. These enemies in the first level gave me a challenge already, and I ultimately made the Kusarigama because its speed better fit my playstyle. In my head, ninjutsu sound really cool, so I leveled that, allowing me to use Galnet Broth or a poison effect on my weapon, which is 1,000,000% not the best option, but more about that later. Onryoki is the first major boss here, and he beat me up pretty good. A giant ogre who has some speed on him, and right now I suck at blocking, so he hits me constantly. I purchased some bombs as my second ninjutsu upgrade, but unfortunately they don't instantly defeat this guy like I had hoped. Turns out the scythe-like weapon I have can be used in its heavy stance to melt this guy's stagger meter, giving me more opportunity to hit him and cut down the health bar nicely. It was still really tough, but that one attack carried me hard here. Now, as far as world design in this game, it's set up into different regions. Each region has about 3-ish main missions and multiple side missions. I completed all of the side missions before each main, as that allows you to level up better for the tough bosses. The side missions usually take part in small sections of a main level, having you kill a specific enemy or find some item. Some are really short and easy, while others can make you grit your teeth. In the second mission, I start playing around with a gun, as yeah, you get a gun in this game, letting you shoot enemies in weak spots, instantly dropping them. Useful for dealing with annoying ranged peons. The boss for this level is a vampiric bat lady. No, I'm not going to attempt a pronunciation in this game, just roll with it. As I still don't understand a lot of the core mechanics, I ran headfirst into a massive brick wall. There are certain weapon skills you can unlock as you level up. A few of them can melt bosses and other enemies as they use less stamina to attack faster. I had none of them, which of course is bad. The Bat Lady is based on paralysis. She can move quickly and sometimes shoot out purple waves that freeze you in place, granting her time to just walk over and kill you. Ideally, you bait out an attack and then move in yourself using the dash. Since damage was a huge issue for me, I ran the big axe and only played in high stance, which pretty much doesn't let you dodge attacks, at least not nearly as easily. You need to switch stances during battle to get the most out of this combat, and honestly, mid stance is really strong for this. I did go into magic a bit to get some fire talismans, and they helped a lot, but it's all about blocking and not getting hit. Which blocking was how I eventually beat her, but it took forever, and I only hit her once every so often. Very discouraging, let me tell you, but hey, she's down, which is all that matters. After several more side missions for levels, I have gained some more ninjutsu bombs. Early on, it seems like magic is far superior, and honestly required for some of its buffs and debuffs. Still, I had not gone into that at all, other than for some of the fire talismans. The next main mission was a rainy palace of sorts. I got majorly lost while trying to knock down all these trees, which is not the last time that'll happen. The midway boss for this level is of course the Lightning Lion Snake. With very limited movesets, it doesn't take long to learn exactly how he fights, but stagger is the key here, and I simply don't have it. The damage I was doing was very low. Lightning kept killing me in 1 or 2 hits, and each time I did well, he would stagger and instantly drop me. After trying heavy armor out for better blocking, I said screw it and wore no armor at all, trying to just focus on the combat as much as possible. You could tell the frustration was setting in and I was not having a great time. My problem was entirely the stance. I was running heavy and you need to switch. It's a core mechanic you need to learn. Regardless, I did finally take him down after way too many attempts. And again, this was only the midway boss for this level. One thing I do want to bring up are these little green creatures. You need to collect them throughout the levels and they will be hidden in various locations. Each one you find grants you a set perk you can select in one of the shrines. I opted for the extra heals as I really needed them, but they're a nice addition to the game. Wo Long was what got me interested in this series in the first place, and that game has flags as collectibles. These green guys are much harder to find sometimes, but also a bit more rewarding. With the labyrinth below explored and all the doors open, I gain help from a friendly lady, who is insanely OP at the moment and will trash everything for me. Too bad she won't help in the boss fight here. Tachibana is a fast swordsman. He has an attack that zooms him across the arena, slicing for high damage. It hurts. A lot. How'd I take this guy down? Well, it took a while, but I hit him once from across the screen, over and over. The heavy attack for this weapon throws the blunt end long distances. Not really great in combos, but has high damage, and will usually hit the enemy. So we let the cheese begin, as I smacked him over and over for like 10 minutes straight. Not a very proud way to go about it, but hey, I did get one normal hit in to finish him off, so yay me. Another mission down brings us to the cave level. Poison covers the ground, forcing you to break these rocks to expunge it from existence. Luckily, ninjutsu has some items that cures poison and makes you resistant to it. Those come in handy. What's funny is the level's really short, but it seems long because you can't find where you're going and the poison needs to be dealt with as fast as possible, which is kind of a staple for the entire game. Every level is relatively short, all things considered, but you could play one for over an hour at times due to getting lost. Kind of annoying first time playing, but makes the level design stand as this game's most well done feature, honestly. The Great Centipede finally greets me, and yeah, I can actually say this one's name. He also has poison in his arena and shoots crap at you. This guy is the lesson in timing, as you need to correctly dodge 2 of his attacks, and that's about all you can do there. Blocking is also key as he mows you down otherwise. I did grab yet another bomb from ninjutsu, and this time it's got massive damage. Really fun one to try out. My spirit power came in clutch for this one as it's my current high damage dealer. I'm telling you, damage is such an issue until later on when I figure out how weapon skills work, but again, that's later of course. The Umi. Oh, how I hate the giant water boss. The mechanics for this fight is you need to light some totems around the level. Once lit, they'll set 3 fires in the boss arena, which instantly kills the little guys, so you don't need to deal with them and can focus on the big giant blob. Fire's obviously the best here, and hitting the yellow spot results in that big damage. Sadly, learning all of this takes a while, and the boss hits hard. Plus, he transitions halfway through to a smaller blob that can be even more difficult to dodge. Turns out this is one of the easier bosses, but you have to know how these creatures operate. Blocking hits will massively help defeat him, and baiting out the weak point before attacking makes things go by faster. Using the giant fires, I ignited my weapon and extinguished the puddle from the world. You have no idea how long this one took. So here's where the story gets more interesting. One more main mission up next, that being the spider level. There are spooters everywhere with some pretty challenging areas. This one broke me. Took me a little under 2 hours to complete it as I could not find the door for the palace key. The large underground area is where I thought it was, but turns out that was only for some teacup extra thing. So I started to just not enjoy the game as the combat was getting way too difficult, and of course the spider boss wouldn't die. She has a weak spot behind her being her sack, but she will never let me hit it. All I did was run in circles over and over as I waited for one moment to attack. I did start to enjoy the spear here, which has some amazing combos, but it wasn't improving my outlook on the game. I finished the spider and vowed that I'd never touch Nioh again. Great game, but I just don't get it. But of course, that's not where this story ends. I completely restarted my character. After watching a few speedruns and a few guides, I realized, hey, I've been playing the game wrong the entire time. To change things, I grabbed the katana, but kept the small scythe weapon. Running with no armor at all will boost my damage from the sword, as it has a stat for that. And this time, going full into magic. That section has the best talismans for decreasing enemy armor and granting you more damage. Now we can really get things going. Just to compare the two runs, I now beat the water boss first try and was able to get a scroll that let me not die for one death hit. And these fire orbs melt from a distance. It's safe to say I was much better understanding the combat, with the medium stance of the sword being my favorite. Magic grants the best buffs, and when decreasing enemy armor, you actually have good damage. So after the spider gets beat down once again, we're on to the ice level. The most straightforward and easy level so far, as enemies are spread out, and once you find the boss, you can get there without too much trouble. The run isn't the best as it's long, but no need to fight anything, which is great. As for the ice lady, she started to dampen my spirits once again. You see, this run had been so much better than the last one, not even comparable at all. But the ice witch had so many attacks that I couldn't dodge. Most bosses do a lot of damage, but she was the first one that had high damage and speed, as she can attack so quickly you die before thinking. Dang it, man, such a better run and I still got stuck. The Reaper Slice ability up to this point just melted the bosses, but how do you play this game? Luckily, there's a little bit of cheese that we can use to break Nioh. Sloth Talismans. Once again, upgrading more into magic, we get the Sloth Talismans. 2 throwable casts of magic that reduce enemy movement speed by over half. I could have gotten these way earlier, but just didn't know it. And they're by far the most useful item in the game, reducing even bosses to such a speed that you can attack as much as you like. At first, you only get 2 of them, and you need to make sure they hit, but just look at this. She gave me so much more time to cast my debuffs and buffs, applying lightning to slow her even more. Beat her first try once I had the sloth. These are game-changing. Now, one other difference that changed the game for me was learning what elements do. Poison and fire deal damage over time, but lightning actually slows enemies, and water makes you deal more damage to them. So I went into water talismans as quickly as I could. Add that with the armor debuff and you can instantly kill bosses. It's the biggest difference in the world. Elemental buffs are huge in Nioh, and applying 2 will grant Discourse, I think it's called, which basically takes away stagger resist from enemies. You can abuse them to death after that point. Also, make sure to go back and play the extra missions at the dojo. They're for training purposes, but actually unlock more abilities for your weapons and magic. You can see how going in blind could make this game hard. There's a lot of things to consider when going into a fight. As far as story goes, it's pretty simple. We're chasing the bad guy around as he turns people into monsters. He wants the Amrita as it grants loads of power, but I want my little spirit guardian back. There's a bit more development to other characters, but it's about that simple. Unfortunately, my cat buddy sacrifices himself to the demons to try and stop them, transforming into the White Tiger. Thankfully, we finally have a nice setup going, as slowing and applying debuffs tremendously changes the pace of boss fights. He took a couple tries, but this Reaper skill on the Kusuragama is DPS king, cutting down entire health bars in seconds. And finally, I felt like I could deal some real damage in this game. The infamous Ninja Dojo makes its appearance, hiding paths behind walls and flipping rooms upside down altogether. This perception-based tactic got to me a bit, but it was pretty fun trying to solve the puzzle. Giant Toad is another boss run that isn't all that close. However, the fight itself is much better. He has some surprisingly ranged attacks with his spear that caught me off guard constantly. My damage was solid, but I was wasting too many items to get behind him, and thus got killed a few times. After learning to back off more, avoiding the slam down, I got the perfect run and sliced him up good. Frog legs for dinner, boys. Our next very foggy and extremely short level, we meet the Ogress. I actually found her to be the easiest boss in the game. Just stuck right to her front side and she couldn't hit me with hardly any of her attacks. You have to watch out for the grab and jump, but for the most parts, it's debuff, run in, and hug. I really couldn't pull off a first try here as she's got high damage, but it was one of the most relaxing boss fights of this entire game. I quite liked it after the experience I've already had. Right about here is where the side missions start to drastically change. Half of them are arenas with just pure combat and are relatively short. The other half are purely maze-based and awful. Several side missions took me forever to complete after this point, as they throw some tough dudes at you and don't make the objective all that clear. I much prefer the arena ones, especially the ones where a boss showed up. Honda is next, and he's the gimmick fight. Can't touch him at all because he's a fast maniac, but destroy the 3 crystals in the room and the fight's over instantly. I gave this one a good many attempts at actually fighting him, but he's not someone to trifle with, that's for sure. Which brings us to the lady. I had so much trouble against this chick. Human bosses tend to block a large portion of your attacks, and their stamina doesn't deplete hardly at all when doing so, meaning you can't simply abuse things like the Reaper attack that you can use against monsters. And this lady also has a fast lunge she can chain into more lunges. I found this attack to be very easy to dodge eventually, and once that's down, that's it for the fight. But it took me the longest time to realize you need to be on the side opposite of her sword, otherwise she hits you every time. And halfway through, she gets into this air jump where she lunges at you again, making for some painful moments. I tried a variety of things here, such as different stances and the magic projectiles, eventually settling on the low stance attack with the Kusarigama. It used up less of my ki, allowing me to get out, and stun locked her enough to get damage in. Staying aggressive by dashing towards her after she attacks and instantly using the low stance made everything click. This was one of those times where focusing really helped, as you don't have enough time to debuff her due to her speed. Instead, just concentrate on the fight itself and things go smoothly. Very different from the rest of the game, I thought. I was extremely relieved to finally get this one in the bag, let me tell you. A fire level makes its way here, and this one was interesting. You need to break water barrels so that the wet status will keep you from burning in the fire. New mercenary men shoot repeater pistols at you, which don't feel great. Overall, fun level. However, this one has the worst boss run. You need to find it in this maze of folded walls, then pass by 8 enemies while trying not to end up in the fire yourself. Truly needed a shrine closer to this one, but what you gonna do? Thankfully, this boss was another easy one for me. The merc uses bombs and guns to try and hit you from afar. He'll fly away quickly to keep you from hitting him repeatedly, and you can actually push him into the fire to get some damage dealt. The soundtrack of this battle was absolutely gorgeous, and not getting knee grabbed sorta helps out a lot. I know each of the weapons are good in Nioh, and all of them definitely have cool attacks, but the Kusarigama is easily my favorite. The Reaper skill trashes tough encounters, applying statuses immediately, and when that doesn't work, you have the light stance attack that's very reliable. I can see this boss being a tricky fight, but thanks to all the tools that I already have saved, he missed his bombs and fell down defeated. Here's a weird level. This one's a battlefield. A good army is fighting the bad army, and you're right in the middle of it. You can't see far with this thick blanket of smog covering everything. The first boss pops up almost immediately, also having a shortcut directly next to the shrine. This is a dual sword demon. He's very fast and can lunge across the arena at you. Halfway through, he powers up and hits so much harder. First phase was a no-brainer every time, but that second one was tricky. I found the key was to stay in front of him and give it a bit of a distance. If you try to hug him from behind, he's too difficult to dodge when he starts to attack. It's not often that I stun lock bosses, but when it happens, the fight's already over. After this fight, we rush straight into a massive battlefield. There are 20 plus minions in one area with cannons shooting you. A clear path isn't all that visible, so it takes a minute to find the next shrine. I pretty much skipped this entire level unintentionally, just because I was trying to avoid the cannons. Worked out well in my favor though. Shima tries to take us on, and at first he was giving me the business. A spear is a formidable opponent in and of itself in Nioh. Enemies carrying them has so much range and will attack you in the blink of an eye. I also tried lightning and then realized, hey, this is a lightning boss, so that doesn't work. Water seemed to be the key, as once again that sloth talisman grants you double if not triple the number of hits you would usually get at one time. As long as you stay in the mid to low stance, you can easily dodge any attack and punish. I'm still using a katana often for other fights, but when it comes to bosses, this chain-like flail is just too good to pass up. On to one of the toughest levels yet. We meet a skeleton lord. This massive demonic presence sits in a crater around the entire level. We need to purify these stones so we can gain buffs and lock the big sucker down. Probably the smallest level yet, but numerous monsters are thrown at you and other player deaths rise to take us down as well. Thankfully, most of the harder enemies don't respawn, so we can use our really good items right away. I did meet a yokai with the same weapon as me, easily the most challenging yokai to defeat, which honestly makes sense after using the thing. With all crystals purified, it's time to fight the skeleton. When he attacks you, there's an opening to break his hands. Do so and he lays his head down so that you can hit him. Using the Reaper skill, I melted as much health as possible. Rinse and repeat. But once both hands are broken, I sort of had no idea what else to do. I mean, I had him down really low, but you can't break him down anymore. I used my living weapon or spirit power twice in a row so that I would be immune to any damage, just trying to figure out what was going on. But I didn't find anything. Sort of afraid of dying at this point, as it taken a while, I landed on a strategy that should not have worked. I shot him. Using my bow and gun, I just shot his weak spot until he died. I'm fairly certain there's another way to knock him down, but this managed in a pinch. Actually, I'd been upgrading how many arrows and bullets I could carry. Otherwise, I don't know if I'd had enough for this. All things considered, good boss fight. Much better than the big boss in Wo Long, that's for sure. With the jungle level up next, there really isn't much to say about this one. It was filled with about 100 enemies, but getting to the boss took no time at all. Ishida probably should have been harder than he was. I mean, no, I didn't go deathless, of course not. But after a couple of attempts, he got melted. Being a slower boss already, he was way too easy to read. With his stagger broken, I used living weapon and went to town. Maybe he's weak to fire? I don't really know, but as soon as that fire blade was active, he dropped to the floor. Considering all the tough encounters early on in this game, it's nice to finally level up in the power department. Feeling stronger than the boss is nice and satisfying. Before I did the single worst level in any game ever, I managed to upgrade my magic a bit more, now granting me 6 sloth talismans, which lets me slow every single enemy there is. Bosses can be slowed the entire fight now, as well as missing is not that bad. But here we go into the underground dojo, I guess. I hate this level. Not only is it dark in a giant maze, but it's got like 2 shrines total. The second one you can't even get to. Well, obviously you can, but I never found it. I had to run through the entire thing deathless, taking careful steps so as not to fall in a pit or something. Living weapons saved me several times, and without the slow, I don't think this would have been possible. And once I think I finally found a shrine, turns out it's the boss door. If I die, I restart a half hour of work, at least. Most bosses took me at least 3 tries to get down the attacks. There's no way this is happening. Except, it did. The game actually granted me 1 break and let me defeat the Obsidian Samurai. He has some crazy range with his axe, but the opening after he does this attack grants me several hits. I opted to use the sword this time as it felt much safer and easier to dodge out of if I needed to. Mine already has lightning infused on it, which is good as I was out of every single item at this point. It was grueling work. It took every ounce of my concentration that I had, but he eventually got defeated. He does have a sword as well, but it's a lot harder to deal with. I simply stayed away until he pulled the axe back out because, I mean, it's way more exploitable. I've never been so done with a level before, and I probably would have lost it if I'd had to redo the entire thing. So what happens when we finally get done with that nightmare? I go and do the exact same level. The next side mission takes place in that maze, and the goal is even more hidden than the main level. Easily the worst level in Nioh, and I hated every single second I was there. The boss also happens to be the dual sword boss from earlier, and I died many times to him. Fun running that again and again and again. Finally, we reach the last level. Time to take out the cloaked man once and for all. I got help from 2 friends, although the lady decided to jump off a cliff, leaving the guy to do all the work. They trash everything, thankfully, as they throw 6 giant yokai at you in a row. Finally, on my own again, though, we'd see why this is the best level. There are about 7-ish boss fights here at the end. First, we take down the Nioh lion snake thing again. About the 4th time I've killed it, but okay. Nothing new to see here, really. The vamp bat comes back, although this one was fun. Before, I was way too weak, and now I can actually get some revenge. As long as you get that debuff armor off, the living weapon will drop any boss instantly. It's kind of crazy. Then we face the spider again. I have some more ninjutsu that also slows enemy movement, which just trivializes fights. Of course, the spider lady refuses to turn her back, making the execution take longer than necessary. And then we get to the first boss of the game, the giant ogre. Low stance and an element, and this guy's a joke. Seriously, this level's fun. I mean, back-to-back bosses is a blast. After the hooded guy summons yet another person from the dead to fight me, I face Oda. He's fast, but once again, slow from magic, slow from ninjutsu, armor debuff, water on the weapon, light attack. I mean, this pattern's insane. Once you get the tools, they really put in the work. And the living weapon at this point was melting. Some of these later bosses might actually be challenging, but they didn't get to fight me. After the man refuses to finish me off, Kelley decides to finally fight me. Yeah, his name is Kelley, I guess. This boss was really easy. Basically, you're going to get instantly killed if he grabs you, but otherwise, you're free to hit him over and over. As he blocks, you can just move backwards and re-engage after he teleports. The ninjutsu turns out to be incredibly valuable as they stun him just enough to give me the critical attacks that I need. Seems like playing into both magic and ninjutsu together would be the best way to go. Grants you amazing skills from each, which allows you to juggle bosses into stun lock. Kelley did manage to kill me while he was at 0 health, but that just has to happen at least once, right? Anyway, I eventually beat him. And as is customary in these games, he decided it wasn't enough and turns into a monster. A multi-headed snake to be exact. I'll admit, this one had me stumped at first. You go right in after the last boss, so I had no heals the first try, and the snake is impossible to hit most of the time. The health bar is actually for all the snakes together, so once it goes down, you fight 2, and then you fight a whole bunch of them at the same time. After they use a physical bite attack or a flame breath, you can rush in and take them down. Figuring out what's going on is over half the battle, and while it did seem dumb at first, I grew to like the fight in the end. The last snake gets a full health bar and several new ways to kill you. Bait out the flame breath and your Reaper skill will do all the work. The snake horde gets defeated and victory is mine once again. Here, we finally get the first divine weapons, which are obviously our best gear so far. And contrary to what you might expect, the game is not actually over. We return with our guardian spirit in hand back to the fort where we started. Down under the castle, we find out that Kelley was actually a clone, manufactured for the sole purpose of bringing back Amrita for his master. We take on 3 of his underpowered selves, once more managing to defeat them, using even more cheese from paralysis. These throwable clouds that freeze enemies in place, granting you an instant critical attack. Quite powerful indeed. Finally, it all comes down to this. We meet 100 Eyes, the corrupt man obsessed with Amrita. Let's kick this thing's butt and beat Nioh once and for all. With that being done, Nioh is finished. There are actually 3 DLCs for this game as well as an extensive NG Plus system to create some really nice builds. Nioh doesn't let you get the really good stuff until that point, but unfortunately it's locked behind level 150 and I'm about 109 at the end of this. So no, I will not be finishing the extra stuff as that's a bit more grinding than I signed up for. But great game regardless. I'd say it's the hardest game I've ever played to date, but once you get the mechanics down and start to find what works for you, things get really fun. This was some of the best combat I've ever had the pleasure of messing with, and I'm excited to see how Nioh 2 expands on it. Hopefully you enjoyed this journey with me, and if you could, leave a like down below, I'd appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.